Okay, all right, beautiful people. Today's video is going to be on written exams. I'm going to give you a complete rundown of what to expect for these police or law enforcement entry exams, how to best prepare for them, some of the pitfalls, etc. So pay close attention. Now, sometime back, the police academy started to realize that a lot of people, younger people, don't read a lot, and so they created the post-pellet B exam. And the post-pellet B exam in California is a written exam to try to get you to show them that you are prepared to enter the police academy in terms of being at the appropriate written comprehension skills, like a comprehension of whatever you read, you understand what you're reading, and demonstrating the ability to have reasoning, critical thinking skills. And so I have made some post-pellet V videos. If you haven't already watched them, I encourage you to go back on my channel and search for them, and they'll be able to pull it up and give you really good tips. So now let's get started with the written exam. You've decided you want to get into law enforcement, and how do you prepare for this exam? And what are some tips that I could give you? I've told you in previous videos that I've taken close to, I don't know, 35 of these written exams. So I know the ins and outs. I know that companies like Arco, Barron's, Kaplan, etc., they produce these study guides, these booklets that you can find at most bookstores. So if you haven't visited a bookstore in a while, I encourage you to go find a Barnes & Noble or a similar bookstore, or your local library, county library, city library, to find out what they have for you in terms of preparing for these exams. So I'm gonna break down the exam in 3 different parts. We're gonna start with memorization. Some of the exams, I'm not talking about the post-pellet B, I'm talking about the actual written exams. Some of them have a memorization page where you basically stare at a picture for 7 minutes, and then they have you take the test, and at the end of the test they have you go back to the picture, and then they ask you questions on the picture. And so the ones that I took was like a picture of a street, for example, and so you have a camera that's looking down the middle of the street, there's businesses on both sides, and then how do you prepare for that? Well, I read a book a while back on memory and how we remember things, and it talks about landmarks, and it talks about talking to your brain to establish landmarks of things that you can then tell a story about later. So what I've done is, what I would do is I would divide the picture in half, and I would always start with the left side of the picture and then move my way to the right. And the reason being is you read from left to right, so your brain thinks that way whenever it comes down to memorization and also reading for comprehension, critical thinking, etc. So on that page, I would start with one point. Say I started with the fire hydrant on the left-hand side. It was the closest object that I could start telling the story. So I would tell myself, okay, I see the fire hydrant on the left-hand side, and then I would say to the right of the fire hydrant is a parked car. It's a white car, and then to the left of the fire hydrant is a stairs, like a set of like a ladder, where somebody's working on the canopy for this business. So then I go back and I'd say, so there's a fire hydrant next to the right of the fire hydrant is a white car that's parked on the side of the road. To the left, there's a ladder up against the building, and there's someone on that ladder working on the canopy for this business. And then I would say the business is a bakery, and then the bakery door is open. It looks like the bakery window is broken. And then I would start moving to the right, as I was memorizing the page. And so you have to kind of repeat this over and over until you memorize half the page. And then you pick it up at the middle of the street, and then you go right. So you find something in the middle of the street, whether it's a piece of garbage on the road or something like that. It has to be a landmark. And so then you can close your eyes and you can reproduce this, You can close your eyes. So you basically are watching the picture, you set the landmarks, and then you relate it to another landmark. So earlier I was telling you about the fire hydrant. To the right of it is a white parked car. To the left of the parked car is a set of a ladder, where somebody's on it. They're going up the steps to fix an awning, and then underneath that awning is a bakery, and then that bakery has a broken window and the entry door is open. And then if you keep going to the right, you keep repeating this. And so what you're doing is you're embedding this picture into your mind by allowing yourself to create a story of landmarks. So that's the first part of a lot of tests, right? To see how good your memory is in terms of looking at something and then being able to answer questions later. At the end of the exam, they're going to be asking you questions about that picture, right? The other exams that I've taken, they will ask you to read a memo, right? Instead of the memory parts that I just described, they're going to ask you to read a memorandum, a memo that was written by a supervisor to the officers, telling them to enforce a certain law or to look for a certain suspect, and then providing description of that suspect and the charges they wanted for it, whatever. The same thing that I used on the memorization of a picture, you need to start thinking about memorizing this memo that was written by a supervisor to you. And so you read the memo, but now you don't read it fast, you read it very slowly for understanding what it's telling you. And so the memorandum will say, attention all officers, a group of criminals, 3 of them have identified as running a counterfeit operation where they are printing not only United States currency, money, using a color printer, but they're also printing checks from various companies, and they've been committing these crimes mainly on the East Coast, but we received word they're moving to the West Coast. If you run them in the computer, they are wanted currently for several warrants out of such and such, United States, marshals, whatever. And so if located, considered armed and dangerous, call backup, approach with caution, all those things that memorandums will tell you, so that you don't just run into a situation. And so the same thing, you can't just read that memo and say, okay, I read it. No, did you read it for comprehension, right? How many suspects were involved? What are the charges? What is their MO, modus of operandi? So what type of crimes are they creating? In this case, they're producing United States money currency using color copiers, also duplicating checks from various companies. Okay, so which companies? Again, these are questions that if you read something very fast, you're not going to remember. And so your mind is a sponge. If you just slow it down enough and start reading something for comprehension and not just to kind of skim it, then you'll be good to go. And the same thing with the picture. At the end of the test, they'll ask you questions about the memorandum to see if you remember what the supervisors want you to do. So that's the issue there. The next part is let's talk about multiple choice for a minute or so. Multiple choice examinations are basically examinations that have one correct answer, but right off the top, most of the time they have 4 choices that you can pick from, and 2 of those choices are totally wrong, and you find out right away, okay, these are wrong. You identify them by process of elimination. You read the question. If you really understand what is being asked, you can just cross those things off, and then you have to spend the rest of your time trying to figure out what's the next best answer of the 2 remaining answers. So I mentioned in previous videos that they ask you not to write in these booklets, and I'm telling you to ignore that request. I'm asking you to actually write in the booklets. A lot of times you just write across, a line up and down, a line from left to right, just like you would like a church cross, and then put north at the top, south at the bottom. If north is at the top, south at the bottom, to your left is west, to your right is east. So some people have said that never eat soggy waffles. Be careful about their acronym. Sometimes if you don't understand where north is, you're totally confused. In most maps, north is always on top. So if you're looking at a book map, the top part of the page, that's north. And so to your left, you have west. To your right, you have east. And then behind you, you have south. And so that's important because some of these questions will ask you. You're currently sitting in your patrol car at the intersection of Maple and First Street. These roads are one way going east only, this road west only, and then up and down roads go, one way north, only, or south only. And so you have to label those on the map. They'll give you a map next to the question, and then they'll say there's bank robbery at the top right corner of the map. There's a bank robbery, and so keep in mind there's an accident, so these intersections are currently blocked. And so you have to kind of, as you're reading the question, you're putting that information on the map. That's why I find it funny when they ask you not to write in the booklet. But if you don't write in the booklet, how will you know which streets are blocked? It's just better to put it into a visual form so that you understand which roads are blocked, or which roads you can go north on, or south on, or west on, or east on, or whatever. And so just keep that in mind when you go to answer questions that are asking you what's the fastest way to get there. So slow down and improve your skills for comprehension, for critical thinking, right? Don't read too much into it. It's basically, if you follow what I'm telling you about writing the information from the question on the actual booklet, when you look at the choices, that you'll find out that two of them are wrong, because let's just say that First Street is a one-way north only, and so one of the choices, or two of them, says to go south on First Street. Well, you can't go south on First Street because it's a one-way north only. Okay, I'm gonna stop here, kind of switch to a different part, because I realize I've been talking for about 11 minutes. When you prepare for these exams, the day before, get a good night's sleep, wake up early, have a good breakfast, go to the bathroom, get there early, don't talk to anybody there. You're not there to make friends, you're there to take the test. And I encourage you to sit towards the front of the class, preferably closest to a wall, so that you're looking at the front and you're not looking at people behind you. Don't turn around to look at people behind you. Again, there's a psychological factor that kicks in when you are sitting in the middle of a group of people. You start to ask yourself, how much better are you, or are you as good as them? And they're probably better than you. You start getting this doubt feeling. So if preferably to get there, sit on the first row or second row, preferably on the first row, all the way up against a wall so you can angle your chair. Now go to the, once you've identified your seat, get up and go to the bathroom, number one, or number two if you have to. But and then you can get a bottle of water to take little short sips, and make sure you have two pencils, not just one, in case one breaks. And again, time yourself. They'll tell you how much you have to take the test, and so you just have to time yourself, and you have to use these tips. Now, most of the time they'll tell you that your first choice is the correct choice. So sometimes marking a bubble and then changing your mind later, it's a 50-50 thing, because then, unless you know for sure that's a wrong thing, then that's what's going on. Make sure as you're bubbling in the questions that your question number matches your answer sheet, so that you don't mess up. Now, at the very end of the test, they gave you the 5-minute warning. You haven't done 20 questions. Pick a letter, right? Pick a letter. I always pick B, and then start at the bottom, and then mark all the questions B, and then leave a couple questions for you to do for the last 5 minutes to work on. And as I told you in a previous video, and if you haven't watched it, please watch it, on the psychological ambivert video. Do not do that with psychological examinations. Only do this, what I told you, on police examinations, because the chances of you getting some questions right or wrong, or right, if you fill all the same letters, are on your side. That for the psychological examinations, do not, I repeat, do not do that, because for psychologicals, they ask the same question 5 different ways, and one of those questions is, I've thought about committing suicide often, or something like that. And then let's just say you're bubbling in that answer all the way, you're going to get yes, and then you get disqualified based on that. So I'm going to wrap this up because it's kind of gone on to a long video. My last piece of advice is to become super selfish about your time. Most of these agencies are giving these law enforcement tests on a Saturday. Even the physical agility, it's on Saturdays, so pretty much the weekends. So you have to clear some weekends to go ahead and do this. This is not a social activity. You're not going to go there with your buddy, etc., etc. You're just going there to take the test. And so you don't have to ask a friend to go with you, or so that you don't go alone. No, you're there to take the test. The other thing is, if it's an oral interview, when you're done, grab your smartphone, turn on your voice memo, and start recording some of the questions that were asked on an oral interview, or some of the information that was on the written exam that you completely felt unprepared for. And then you can ask people like myself and others, hey, on the exam we had this, and this, whatever. You need to start a database at home of information from these written exams, from these oral interviews, etc., so that you can prepare yourself to answer those exams. Now, if you fail the first exam, as I did, in the second exam, as I did, don't get all panic and don't go to the gutter and start thinking, oh my God, it's not meant to be, blah, blah, blah. No, like, you need to prepare more. So you need to start reading, and as I've said in previous videos, you need to start reading what? You need to start reading the Wall Street Journal, the short stories in the Wall Street Journal. Why? Because their editors are incredible, and before those stories get they come out, the editors review them for accuracy, for grammar, punctuation, to follow chronological order, etc. So that's how you write police reports, right? And so they're like little short stories. And so by reading the Wall Street Journal on a daily basis, short stories, not to get politically involved or get all depressed because of all the stuff that happened, just to learn the basic skills of writing, that's really going to help you. So anyway, I think these tips are just great, and I hope that you're able to implement some of them. This was asked by a subscriber recently, how to prepare for these written exams, what to look forward to, etc. Please replay this video again, because I know I was talking kind of fast, so that you understand exactly what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing, and so that how to prepare for these interviews, etc. All right, please subscribe if you haven't already done so. Hit the like button, because I want the others to like it, and if we each help one, right? Each one help one, then we're going to help each other out through this whole process. And so share this video with others who have not seen it and maybe need help in preparing for the written exam. And please continue to send me information on ideas for future videos, because this is how we keep it going. This is how I can continue to help you. And I appreciate you listening. Take great care and be safe out there.